morning, everyone.
Morning.
My turn, Maurita.
That's right.
You're next. You can still stand there. I'll only take a couple seconds here. Thank you for that beautiful music, Rick. We certainly appreciated it. So we have Dr. Maurita will be our speaker this morning. We will be seeing Joy True on the television here. And of course, Rick is our, in-house musician. I'd like to thank everybody for coming this morning. And if you would please turn your phones off or to mute or however you like to do that so they don't go off during the service. Thank you.
Now.
Your turn.
Now my turn. I'm so happy to welcome you all here. What a joy it is always to be together, to feel the positive feelings that people are bringing to this church. It is a pleasure and a joy and an opportunity for community, spiritual community. And I, for one, appreciate that opportunity. How wonderful. Good morning. Well, we start with a Bible verse. I have several of them, actually. There are a couple from 1 Chronicles, 29th chapter. Thine, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. In thine hand is power and might, and in thine hand it is to make great and to give strength unto all. And then from Jeremiah, He hath made the earth by His power. He hath established the world by His wisdom, and hath stretched out the heavens by His discretion. They're talking about an omnipotence. They're talking about the power of God. And that is something that we don't somehow include in our thinking as much as we should. Because it is omnipotent. God, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, here, now, within and without. I talk fairly often about trusting God. And God is, for the most part, a wonderful idea rather than an experience. But in our church, we are striving for the experience, to know God, to experience God, because countless people have. And it's just a matter of effort, consistency, love. But this whole idea of God's power and our ability, indeed, it is a choice that is so sensible to trust that power. We don't think about it so often, but if we could think about it more, the power of God, the power of good, the power of joy and patience and understanding and truth and peace, God power everywhere. There is a wonderful phrase in the 23rd Psalm. I say the 23rd Psalm to myself a lot. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And the rod and the staff were symbols of power, of God's might. Moses took his staff and hit the rock, and water came out. They were able to survive in the desert. Power. And we forget it. We look out on a starry night and know that there are 13 billion light years of space. And that's only the part where there is matter manifesting. And the amount of matter that manifests in this universe is like 4% of the energy that is here. 4%. So we're seeing the tiniest part of it, of God manifesting. Can we trust that? Intellectually, we say, yeah. And that's so overwhelming, that's so amazing. Can we trust it? I mean, when someone starts yelling at you, when you made a mistake, and it's a doozy, can you trust in that power? When you just don't know what to do. What in the world? How am I going to handle this? The power is omnipresent, just as God is. Can we look to that? Can we think about leaning on it? Jesus himself said, of myself I can do nothing. Nothing. The most powerful man that ever walked the earth. I can do nothing. But the Father within doeth the works. Boy, that's some endorsement, isn't it? Isn't it? So, can we trust in omnipotence today? Every day. Shall we say our divine science statement of being? So on the screen there. God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is perfect love, perfect substance. I am the individualized expression of God, and am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance.
Hello, Valley Church. I was going to be there in person today, but I'm going to actually be in Washington, D.C. this weekend for a 24-hour-long circle singing protest in support of the For the People Act. So, yay! Hopefully we can get some good things done. In the meantime, here I am on video, and I'm going to sing a song that I've played for you before. It's called A Satisfied Mind, and it's by Red Hayes and Jack Rhodes. I want to give the songwriters credit. And it's been covered by Johnny Cash and a whole bunch of other cool people. And I know that Jerry really likes this song, so this is for Jerry and all of you. Someone say, if I had money, I would do things my way. Little they know that it's so hard to find one rich man in town with a satisfied mind. Money can't all your youth when you're old. Friend when you're lonely, or peace to your soul. is a pauper at times compared to the man with satisfied mind. My life is over and my time has run out. My friends and my loved ones I will leave with no doubt. One thing's for certain, when it comes my time, leave this old world with a satisfied mind. One thing's for certain, when it comes my time, leave this old world with a satisfied mind.
Well, we thank Joy for joining us, singing for us, even though it isn't in person. It's now time for our healing meditation. We take a little time to silence ourselves, inwardly and outwardly. So much of the time, for most of us, we are with other people, at work or in the store, at home. But even when we take time to be alone, to seek to be alone with God, there is that buzz that goes on in our heads. Oh, gotta do this, don't forget that. Why did she say such and such? You know, he could have done better with that. The buzz goes on, the monkey mind. But what we try to do right now is quiet that incessant activity that goes on in our heads. You take a deep breath and let it out as slowly as possible. And check the body, because we carry so much tension in our faces, our foreheads, jaws, shoulders, our backs. And we make sure that everything is relaxed. Because when we relax the body, the mind begins to slow and quiet as well. And it is in this quiet space that we turn to an omnipresent spirit, to a presence that is always with us, has never left us, cannot leave us, because we are part of Him. We are all connected to one another and to this divine energy, this universal mind, this love, the love that knows no limits, unconditional love. And knowing that God knows all things, we turn to Him knowing that we are helped, we are supported, we are sustained because we are loved. We might bring in a thought of thanks for all the good that is ours, the invisible good, the stuff we take for granted. Having electricity in our homes, a vehicle to use, friends, family, loved ones. We give thanks for all of that, for the opportunity of life itself. There are so many who have only had a few years to walk the earth, and we have had many more years to experience the presence of God, the presence of His good, omnipresent. In the next 90 seconds, I invite you to give thanks, first of all, to give thanks for all the blessings you have. And then to acknowledge that God knows far more about what might trouble you or challenge you or bless you or teach you than you do. And you invite His input in your life. His peace, His promises, His love in action for yourself and for those whom you love. And please include all the people who are on our Valley Community Church prayer list. People around the country who need your prayer thought because they grieve today, or they're worried today, they're apprehensive, depressed perhaps. Not experiencing the good that is available to each and all right here, right now. Hold them in mind during this 90 seconds of silence, of holy silence, that we will observe starting right now. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. We have rested in an awareness of God, here now, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, blessing us as we turn to Him, knowing that all power is something that we have access to as we turn to Him. Jesus said, ask, knock, seek. And shall we do that? Shall we ask? Shall we knock? Shall we seek? And see the miracle unfold? Oh, beloved Father, friend, companion, power, a power on which we can lean any moment of the day or night. We give thanks this day. Give thanks. And say thanks again. Amen. And now, shall we say the Lord's Prayer? This is translation from the Aramaic by a man who was raised so far up in the Syrian mountains that they spoke Aramaic, exactly the same language, the same dialect that Jesus himself spoke. And so we have this translation, which is beautiful, so unique. So we thank Dr. Errico for his wonderful translation, the Nura translation. Together, our Father who is everywhere, your name is sacred, your kingdom is come, your will is throughout the earth, even as it is throughout the universe. You give us our needful bread from day to day, and you forgive our offenses even as we forgive our offenders. And you let us not enter into materialism, but you separate us from error. Because yours are the kingdom, the power, and the song and praise from all ages, throughout all ages, sealed in faith, trust, and truth.
Amen.
Amen. Well, this morning I'm going to be talking about women of the Bible, and specifically John 4:3. Okay, the women of the Bible really encompass some very interesting stories, all the way back to the time of Abraham, through Jesus and beyond. But we have to keep in mind that women in biblical times were in a very different position than women are, for instance, today. It was a highly paternalistic society, and women were largely considered chattel. They were owned by their fathers and their husbands. Now, I'm sure that many of these women were deeply loved by their husbands and their families, but there were no doubt many others who were not loved, who were just considered kind of servants, another mouth to feed, future baby machines. A woman's most important role in life was to be a mother to as many children, especially sons, as many children as possible. Children were needed. They were needed as help in the house, help on the farm. They had to help plant and tend and certainly harvest food. Girls were very specially trained by their mothers to take care of children, to cook, to weave, and they were married off as soon as their menses started. Sons were expected to take care of their elderly parents. Literacy was very rare. Life expectancy was maybe 35 to 40 years. That is, you would live that long if war or a disease, things that we take a pill and cure right away, diseases, starvation, when it didn't rain and things got dry and things wouldn't grow, people starved to death. Death in childbirth was frequent. All of those things could take you far before your 35th year. But there is a wonderful story that has as its central character a woman. And the story is in the book of John, 4th chapter. I want to read it to you. Jesus left Galilee and came again, Jesus left Judea and came again to Galilee. Now generally, you wouldn't go through Galilean territory. You wanted to avoid that. But he did. He went through Galilee. He had to go through Samaritan territory. Then he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the field which Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there, and Jesus was tired by the fatigue of the journey and sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. And there came a woman from Samaria to draw water. And Jesus said to her, "Give me water to drink." His disciples had entered into the city to buy food for themselves. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it? You are a Jew, and yet you ask me for a drink? I who am a Samaritan woman?" For Jews had no social intercourse with Samaritans. Jesus answered, saying to her, "If you only knew the gift of God, and who is the man who said to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "My Lord, you have no leather bucket and no deep well. Where do you get the living water? What, are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well, and he himself drank from it, and his sons and his sheep?" Jesus answered, saying to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again, but whosoever drinks of the water which I give him shall never thirst. But the same water which I give him shall become to him a well of water springing up to life everlasting." The woman said to him, "My Lord, give me of this water so that I may not thirst again and need not come and draw from here." Jesus said to her, "Go and call your husband and come here." She said to him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You said well, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you said is true." Then the woman said to him, My Lord, I see that you are a prophet. Our forefathers worshipped on this mountain, and you say the place where men must worship is in Jerusalem. Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the time is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will they worship the Father. You worship what you do not know, but we worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the time is coming, and it is here, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father also desires worshipers such as these. For God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah, the Christ, is coming. When he is come, he will teach us everything. Jesus said to her, I am he who is speaking to you. While he was talking, his disciples came and were surprised that he was talking with a married woman. But no one said to him, What do you want? What are you talking with her? The woman then left her water jar and went to the city and said to the men, Come and see a man who told me everything which I have done. What, is he the Christ? And the men went out of the city and came to him. During the interval, his disciples begged him, saying, Teacher, eat. But he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. The disciples said among themselves, What? Did some man bring him something to eat? Jesus said to them, My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Do you not say that after 4 months comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, which have turned white and have long been ready for the harvest. A great many Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word of that woman who testified, He told me everything which I have done. So when the Samaritans came to him, they begged him to stay with them, and he stayed with them 2 days. And a great many believed in him because of his word. And they were saying to the woman, Henceforth it is not because of your word that we believe in him, for we ourselves have heard and know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world. 2 days later, Jesus departed thence and went to Galilee. The story says that it was the 6th hour. In other words, it was around noon. And it was hot. Jesus was alone because, of course, the disciples had gone into the city to buy the provisions that they needed for lunch. And it was a Samaritan city called Sychar. They needed bread and wine, and that's what they went to get. Now, bread was the mainstay of the Hebrew meal. There was no such thing as a balanced meal. No, not back then, except perhaps for the very wealthy who could afford it. Bread, for most ordinary people, was the meal. Jesus was sitting at Jacob's well, a well that the patriarch Jacob had dug. This Samaritan woman approaches him at the well, and she's just going to draw some water, and she is astounded when this man talks to her, asks her to give him some water. Now, it was the Jewish custom never, ever to talk to a woman in public. Furthermore, as she points out, Jews would never talk to a Samaritan. They hated the Samaritans. Why? Why did the Jews hate the Samaritans so much? It dated back 500 years. 500 years they had hated the Samaritans. You remember, King David ruled over a united country. He had united the 12 tribes of Israel, and so he had the benefit of a united country. Now his successor, who was Solomon, lived very lavishly. Oh, he taxed the people heavily. And he had a very, very wondrous lifestyle. He had no less than 700 wives, many of whom were foreign princesses, and 300 concubines. My goodness. Solomon completed the enormous temple that David had planned and had not had an opportunity to really start. But Solomon built that enormous, beautiful temple, as well as many other large building projects. When Solomon died, the people asked his son, his successor, Rehoboam, to please reduce the taxes. Don't make such a heavy burden on the people. But instead of listening to his older counselors, Rehoboam followed the advice of his young friends and responded to the equivalent of, "You ain't seen nothing yet." He was really going to suck it to them. The northern 10 tribes rebelled and seceded. They left. They chose Jeroboam as their king, and of course the northern kingdom, those 10 tribes, were called Israel. That was one of their names. So that in that period of times, that was Israel. But whereas the southern kingdom, where Rehoboam ruled, it was called Judah, and Jerusalem was in Judah. Well, Jeroboam, the king of the northern 10 provinces, he wasn't going to have all his people travel south to Jerusalem to worship, to offer sacrifices in the great temple of Solomon. He wasn't going to have any part of that. He set up temples of various idols on mountaintops. He changed the people's worship practices, and after a while the northern kingdom, also known as Israel and Samaria, the Samaritans came from Samaria, they believed that only the first 5 books of the Bible were the law of God. Everything else was just unimportant. They rejected everything but the first 5 books. When Samaria was conquered by the Assyrians, oh my, the Assyrians forced the majority of the Jews to move to other parts of their empire. And then they repopulated Samaria with yet other groups from their, at the time, very large empire. The foreigners brought with them their own pagan idols. Now, there were idols already at the tops of the mountains. And after a while, the Jews intermarried with the foreigners and began worshiping their idols along with the God of Israel. Well, the people of the southern kingdom, Judah, detested the Samaritans for several reasons. First of all, because they repudiated everything else but the first 5 books of the Bible, as well as the religious festivals, the customs, and so forth of the Jews. Now, the Jews from Judah had been taken to Babylon, and many of them had come back, but they had never intermarried with other people. They kept the group, shall we say, pure. That was their idea. So they despised the people of the northern kingdom because they had intermarried with foreigners. They were half-breeds. They were dogs. That was the opinion of the Jews of the southern kingdom. And that hatred, that criticism, had become mutual and had existed for 500 years. So, that hot day, when a gentle-faced Jew asked this middle-aged woman for some water, she was astonished. Jewish men just didn't speak to even Jewish women in public, much less a Samaritan woman. He said, "If you only knew the gift of God and who is the man who said to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Everyone who drinks this water," that is the well water, "will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water which I give him shall never thirst. But the same water which I give him shall become in him a well of water springing up to life eternal." Well, of course she wanted some of that. He said, "Go and call your husband." Well, social protocol required that if a rabbi spoke to a woman, her husband needed to be present. It was just the proper way to do things. And she said, "I have no husband." And he said, "You said well, I have no husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband." Can you imagine her open-mouthed shock? She'd never seen this guy before in her life, this kindly man. Yet he knew her whole past. Well, his was a statement of fact, but it was without reprimand. He wasn't condemning her. He was just stating a fact. And she blurted out, "My Lord, I see that you are a prophet." Scholars have long tried to figure out just how she'd had 5 husbands. Perhaps some of them had died of diseases or been killed in some war, or perhaps she was barren and some men divorced her because she couldn't have their children. She was living with a man, yes, perhaps secretly as a concubine. It was the alternative to living on the street or becoming a prostitute herself because she didn't have any money. A woman who did not have a husband or a family to help them was destitute. They had to live on their own wit and wisdom and take chances. But Jesus, and the way he was speaking to her, excited her, gave her a totally different sense, a sense of hope. And she had never experienced that. He said, "The time is coming, and it is here when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth." You didn't have to go to the temple in Jerusalem. You didn't have to, as in her culture, go to the top of a mountain, to a shrine there. You worshiped within yourself, in spirit. That was true worship. That was what God wanted. The Aramaic translation for spirit also implies universal. Universal. God's presence is universal. It's everywhere. His spirit fills the whole universe. It embraces all. We can go within ourselves and in quiet touch, know that universal presence. The woman said, "I know that the Messiah, the Christ, is coming. When he is come, he will teach us everything." And Jesus said, "I am he who is speaking to you." This was the first time he revealed himself to a non-Jew. His presence, that energy that he exuded, his words, his whole being must have overwhelmed her. She just forgot all about the water part, and she went rushing into town and told the men in town, Come and see a man who told me everything which I have done. What? Is he the Christ? And the men went out of the city and came to him. The people of Sychar streamed out to hear this man, and he and the disciples stayed there for 2 days, teaching, no doubt healing, giving of the living water, and profoundly changing many, many people in that town. Many converted. Many became followers, not because of what the woman had said, as impressive as that was, but because what they had themselves seen and heard. The Samaritan was Jesus' first, but certainly not the last convert in Samaria. She would talk about this probably for the rest of her life. She would herald the new gospel among her own people. It was the beginning of the end of the ancient enmity between these two people. The fields indeed were ripe for the harvest. Why? Why was she at the well in the middle of the day? Women usually went early in the morning, or at twilight when it had gotten cool. Do you think she was perhaps trying to avoid the women of the town with their wagging tongues and maybe the snide remarks, their judgment? But don't you think that she was a new woman after hearing, being enlightened, converted with Jesus' living water? Wouldn't she now hold her head high? Jesus noted, but then ignored the mistakes that she had made in the past, and instead, he gave her a new way to worship, a new way to think of herself, a new way to live. Jesus refused to accept any racial differences or barriers between God's children. Everybody is God's child. Everybody belonged to God. Now this wasn't a first for him. He regularly interacted with prostitutes and thieves and the hated tax collectors. He regularly gave the so-called unworthy his living water. A sense of the availability of newness of life by turning to, by trusting and loving the Father and living righteously. The past and its mistakes were past. Today, now, is the appointed time for living the buoyant life of the Spirit, recognizing God omnipresent, accepting the availability of good, here, right now, rejoicing and seeing the good in our own lives and in other people. It's a beautiful story about one of the women in the Bible, and it shows us so clearly that, first of all, we must not judge others, and we certainly must not judge ourselves. Everyone makes mistakes. We must forgive ourselves and learn from those mistakes. Learn from them. Always remembering that we are each and all children of God, the image of God, heir to all that God is. We must worship him indeed, in spirit and in truth. Shall we close our eyes and give thanks for the reminder that we are not hard on ourselves because of mistakes we have made. We learn from those mistakes. We give thanks for those mistakes that teach us in a way that successes never can teach us, that teach us what to do or what not to do. We give thanks to God for Jesus and his his message of light and love. We give thanks for all the omnipresent good that is right here, right now for us, because God is right here, right now for us. Beloved Father, with hearts full of gratitude, we say thank you. Thank you for that Samaritan woman. Thank you for that wonderful story. Thank you for living water. Amen.
Amen.
This is a song I wrote called Not Gonna Bother, and I don't think you're allowed to sing along. You can tap your feet and clap your hands and sing along in your mind. I'm not gonna bother getting mad. I'm not gonna bother getting mad. I get all caught up in my pride, and that mad just eats me up inside. I'm not gonna bother getting mad. I'm not gonna bother blaming you. I'm not gonna bother blaming you. Feels so good to blame someone else, but I have plenty of blame for myself. I'm not gonna bother blaming you now. I'm not gonna bother feeling blue. I'm not gonna bother feeling blue. Got enough tears to sit and cry and watch my whole life pass me by. I'm not gonna bother feeling blue. I'm not gonna bother start no fight. I'm not gonna bother start no fight. We hurt each other with all our might and then find out nobody is right. I'm not gonna bother start no fight. No. I'm not gonna bother with what you think.
it's now time for the blessing of the gifts. And shall we say the blessing of the gifts? And we certainly bless and thank all those who contribute to the church, because without your help, we would not exist. And with your help, we are able to do more and more things to be of service to others. So together, today I acknowledge God, omnipresent, as the source of all good, as the source of my good. With this acknowledgement, I accept His will, which is abundance in every aspect of my life. I release all thoughts of lack and limitation, and I am open and receptive to the increased flow of abundance to me right now. I joyfully accept the gifts of life and give freely of the special gift that I am. Through me, God omnipresent blesses and multiplies this gift for all. Thank you, dear God. Now we're going to have some announcements.
Good morning. Did that microphone with Maurita sound much better today? Didn't it? Good. So, main thing today is birthday Sunday. Today, August birthdays are Becky Dodson, Melanie, Nancy Stokes, and Carrie Bradford. So let's play Happy Birthday. Can't see yet. So. Okay, please join us next in the annex for a birthday cake and coffee. And we've got 2 birthday cakes over there, so take your choice of what you want. So please join us next door for that. Let's see, the flowers today are sponsored from the church, and they're going to go to Mark and Randolph. I hope they would cheer Randolph up and make him smile. So, thank you. Let's see, we're going to have journaling class, and Pam has an announcement about some journaling.
Thank you, Jan. Hi, everybody. I just want to remind all of you that journaling is Tuesday at 6:30. I'm almost always late. We have a little core group there, and I brought today, for those of you who socialize afterwards, I brought the 3 journals that we share. So we work on our own private work, our own private journals, and we also pass journals around, and it's kind of where we learn from each other, we riff off of each other. I ask permission, so nobody in my journaling class has to share any of their journaling issues if they don't want to. But these are some journals where we've practiced new techniques and learning different things, and they were very interested in sharing those with you. So they'll be in the annex for you to look at while we socialize.
And even though you have a little core group, everybody is still welcome to join.
Oh yes, all the time. We have drop-ins,
right.
guests, sometimes even like guest books.
Okay. So. Okay. All right. Let's see, just a couple other things. Well, we have a board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, and we will be discussing the parking lot. As I've said before, that's going to be our project for this year. It's going to be a major project. So Jerry's been giving some estimates, and it's not going to be a cheap project. So we hope to have some solutions by the board meeting to at least discuss and maybe make a final decision on what to do. So it's going to be a rather expensive undertaking. So anyhow, we'll keep you informed about that, but that will be our major, probably our only project this year for the church to do. One last thing is that I know the governor this week, the mask thing is coming back up around again, and so he has recommended that we wear masks on the indoors. So I'm going to talk to the rest of the board this morning after church, and we probably will be going back to wearing a mask indoors for a while. I mean, we did such a great job the past year and a half. I don't want to mess it up now for anybody to be
sick or anything. So I'm thinking that we probably will start wearing, but I will make a one call this week after we decide. But be prepared for that. Don't throw them away. So, okay. Maria, did you have anything else? No. Okay. All right.
The final thing we have been doing for quite a few months is going within and blessing our country, because we're certainly going through times of great difficulty with the pandemic and the great diversity of ideas and perhaps prejudices, when love should reign. So we take the last 90 seconds of our time together to know the truth about our country and to know the fulfillment of the great promise that it is. Shall we all do that in the next 90 seconds? Amen. Thank you so much for your prayers for our country, because it helps. So, God bless you all. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week.